They thought I was just another quiet neighbor. Then I dropped a bomb at the HOA meeting that shut the whole room up, dead silence. One woman actually fainted, all because I refused to pay their 2-0 fine 2-4 growing grass taller than 6 inches. But it wasn't just about the lawn. It was about the line they crossed, sending inspectors to my backyard at dawn, threatening liens, even reporting me to the city over a woodpile. I stayed calm. I followed the rules. I paid my dues. But when they tried to take my property rights, when they threatened to auction my home over a tree, I planted something in me snapped. And that's when I pulled out the document no one saw coming. The kind of legal bombshell that doesn't just win a dispute. It burns the whole system down. What did I reveal that made the HOA president call a sudden emergency meeting and vanish for 3 days? You won't believe what happens when an ordinary homeowner fights back and wins. 1-09-45. Setup. It started like any other dream come true. Ethan Cole stood on the cracked concrete slab of his backyard, a cold beer in one hand and a measuring tape in the other, squinting under the golden haze of a late summer sunset. After 12 years of cramped apartments, overtime shifts, and saving every penny, he'd finally done it. He bought his first home. Not some cookie-cutter box in a soulless subdivision, but a modest mid-century ranch on the edge of Pine Hollow Estates, nestled against a quiet tree line where deer still wandered at dawn. It wasn't much to look at: peeling paint, a sagging porch, a yard more weeds than grass, but to Ethan, it was freedom. His freedom. No landlord, no permission slips to hang a shelf, no more whispering through thin walls, afraid of complaints. This was his land, his rules. The neighborhood seemed friendly enough at first. Smiles over fences, occasional waves from retirees walking their dogs. The HOA newsletter arrived monthly in his inbox, mostly reminders about trash pickup and community picnics. He paid his 125 dues without question. He wasn't rich, but he was proud. Every weekend he sanded floors, planted native wildflowers, built a small cedar shed for his tools. He even started a vegetable garden, tomatoes, peppers, kale, right in the backyard, just steps from the forest edge. Then came the letter. It arrived in a crisp white envelope, stamped with the official seal of the Pine Hollow Homeowners Association. No return address, just a typed notice. Violation notice 417. Unauthorized exterior structure. Non-compliant landscaping. Ethan read it 3 times, confused. The shed? He'd checked the bylaws. It was under 120 square feet. No permits needed. The garden? He wasn't selling produce. It wasn't a farm. But the HOA didn't care. They demanded the shed be removed within 14 days. The garden, classified as agricultural use, was in violation of aesthetic standards. Fines would accrue daily until compliance. He laughed at first. Then he called. Then he emailed. No one responded. And that's when he noticed the camera, small, black, mounted high on the neighbor's garage, pointed directly at his yard. Coincidence? Maybe. But Ethan had a feeling this wasn't about grass height or shed permits. This was about control, and he had no idea how deep it would go. The first fine was $250. Late removal of the shed, they said. Ethan paid it just to keep the peace. He figured, fine, whatever. It's a misunderstanding. He filed an appeal with the HOA board, attaching photos, measurements, even a letter from the county confirming the shed fell under exempt structures. He waited 2 weeks. No response. Then the second notice came. This time, it wasn't just the shed. Now, his woodpile was a violation. Unsightly storage of organic material within 15 feet of the property line, the letter read. A new fine, $350. And because the first violation was still pending, they tacked on a 100 daily penalty. In less than a month, Ethan owed over $1,800. He showed up at the next HOA meeting, clean-shaven, calm, holding a 3-ring binder full of documents. The board sat at a long table in the community center, all 5 of them mostly retirees, one woman in a stiff blazer with a clipboard, another man with a permanent frown. The president, Diane Holloway, didn't even look up when he spoke. "Ma'am," Ethan said, voice steady, "I've followed every rule. I've submitted paperwork. I'm asking for a fair review. Diane finally glanced at him, eyes cold. Rules are rules, Mr. Cole. We don't make exceptions. If we did, where would it end? Next thing you know, someone's parking a trailer in their front yard. It's a wood pile, Ethan said. From my fireplace. I heat my home with it. And we appreciate your frugality, she replied, smirking. But Pine Hollow is a premium community. Aesthetics matter. The room was silent. A few neighbors nodded. One man in the back gave Ethan a sympathetic look, but said nothing. He left that night with a sinking feeling in his chest. This wasn't about rules. It was about power. But the real storm hadn't even begun. 2 days later, a drone buzzed over his property at dawn. Ethan woke to the whirring above his roof. He ran outside. There it was, hovering like a mechanical wasp, circling his backyard, snapping photos. He called the police. They came, took a report, but said unless it was trespassing, which drones technically weren't in airspace, they couldn't do much. Then the inspection started, unannounced. Twice a week. 2 men in polo shirts with clipboards would appear at his gate, snapping pictures of his yard, measuring the height of his grass with rulers, noting overgrown shrubbery and unapproved mulch color. One time, they tried to walk into his backyard while he was showering. He caught them at the fence, clipboard in hand, peering at his tomato plants like border agents. He installed security cameras, motion lights, changed the locks. But the fines kept coming. 50 for excessive leaf accumulation in October after a single storm. 150 for improper holiday lighting display when he hung a single string of white lights on his porch in December. 200 for unauthorized pet structure when his sister's dog visited for a weekend and used a collapsible crate on the patio. Each time he appealed, the board dismissed it with a form letter. Each time he requested a hearing, they scheduled it for 7 p.m. on a Tuesday after his shift at the warehouse. When he showed up anyway, exhausted and in work boots, they cut his speaking time to 2 minutes. And then came the lien. It arrived certified mail, stamped in red. Notice of lien for unpaid assessments and penalties. 4,287.32. The HOA had placed a legal claim on his home. If he didn't pay in 30 days, they could initiate foreclosure proceedings. Ethan sat at his kitchen table, the letter trembling in his hands. This wasn't a fine. This was a threat, a weapon. He thought about selling, just walking away. But the market was slow. His house was now labeled problem property in local realtor circles. He'd lose everything. So he did what he should have done months ago. He called a lawyer. The attorney, a no-nonsense woman named Marla Reyes, listened to his story, flipping through the stack of notices. Then she looked up, eyes sharp. "Have you read your deed?" she asked. Ethan frowned. "The what?" "The deed," she said. "The legal document that transferred ownership of your property. Not the HOA bylaws, the actual deed." He hadn't. He'd signed a mountain of paperwork at closing, handed off to his realtor. He dug it out, found it in a folder labeled mortgage. And that's when he saw it. Buried in the legal jargon, a single clause clear as day. Parcel 4B, bounded by the Eastern Tree Line and Pine Hollow Creek, is excluded from mandatory HOA membership and covenants, provided the owner does not utilize shared amenities. His property, his yard, his shed, his woodpile, his entire backyard was not part of the HOA. The HOA had no authority over him. They'd fined him, harassed him, placed a lien on his home, all illegally. Marla's lips curled into a slow, dangerous smile. They just committed financial and legal overreach on a massive scale. This isn't just about your shed, Ethan. This is about sovereignty. He stared at the deed, heart pounding. They thought he was just a quiet guy with a garden. They had no idea what he was about to do. But even with the truth in his hands, Ethan knew something chilling. The HOA wouldn't back down quietly. And when powerful people feel threatened, they fight dirtier. What happens when one man with a deed takes on an entire association built on control and fear? Because the next meeting, the showdown, would change everything. The Pine Hollow Community Center was packed. Not with retirees sipping lemonade at the annual potluck, but with neighbors, news reporters, even a local blogger with a live stream rolling on a tripod. Word had spread. Something big was happening at the HOA meeting tonight. Ethan sat in the third row, calm, dressed in a crisp button-down, a manila envelope resting on his lap. Beside him, Marla Reyes, his attorney, tapped her pen against a legal pad, eyes scanning the room like a general before battle. At the front, the HOA board sat stiff-backed behind the long table Diane Holloway in the center, her silver hair pulled tight, lips pressed into a thin line. She kept glancing at Ethan, then quickly away, like he was a fuse she knew was burning. The meeting began with the usual droning. Budget reports, landscaping bids, a proposal to install new street signs. But the air was thick. No one was paying attention. Everyone was waiting. Then it was time for resident comments. Ethan stood. A murmur rippled through the room. Cameras turned. Die.